Hi everyone! Welcome to our second week actually, of Virtual Pending Festival. I am Stephanie Van Driesen, and very soon we're going to have our amazing guest who's going to come on right now in order to give you an amazing session on starting and working as a theater company. I know a lot of you are used to seeing Colby on this live, but I'm Stephanie, and I'm also an associate producer at Car Crash Productions. And I'm just going to check now that our guest is on her way. Okay, so here we go. We're going to bring her on now. Everybody say hi to Eleanor Randall just shortly. Okay, great. How's everyone feeling today? Waving all back at ya. Hi, Eleanor. Yay!
It works. That's amazing.
Thank you for joining us today. How are you feeling today?
I'm good. Yeah, not too bad. Thank you.
Fantastic. We've got quite a few people already online ready to rock and roll with us today. So those of you who have been watching our social media know that Elinor Randle, who is online with us today, is the artistic director of Tmesis Theatre. Eleanor, could you tell us about yourself and your involvement in theatre, how you got started? We're all just really excited.
Yeah, So I moved to Liverpool and I did a drama degree, and I started to become really interested in physical work. At the first, it was particularly sort of physical comedy, and there was a program in Liverpool that doesn't exist anymore, but it was amazing. A physical theatre training program that was like being in a rep company for 6 months. So you made shows, professional shows with amazing directors from companies like Told by an Idiot or Trestle, and you had just loads and loads of workshops from different practitioners. So it was just a mix of training. And then from there, I met a couple of people and we set up the company, which has been running. So that was since 2003.
Wow. It's a long time, and you've done a lot with your company.
Yeah, so we started off obviously making work. We're just really interested in physicality and how we can show ideas and stories. And we worked with some amazing practitioners from companies that we kind of worshipped and invited them to come and work with us. And we were really like hungry to learn. I still am all the time. I think it's really important. So we'd travel around the world to do workshops with people. And then we thought, well, why don't we bring them to Liverpool, and then we can do the workshops, meet amazing directors and people that we want to work with, and create a community of people from around the world. So we set up an international festival called Physical Fest. And it was a workshop festival at first, and then it's grown over the years, and it had performance, participatory programs, training company. So we do that. We make shows that tour. We have a training company, like I said. We do workshops, and at the moment we're doing a lot of female-focused work, which is really great. So supporting female creatives and work about women and for women, which is quite exciting.
That's fantastic. I'm just going to mention, as people are coming online, if you've joined us for the first time as well, welcome. And we do have a little question box down. So if anyone has any questions for Eleanor as we go along, please put that in, and we'll also do our best to answer your queries. So Eleanor, I'm excited because you've had a lot of longevity in your career, and also with the company. How did you was it, as you mentioned, it's coming out of a workshop experience and then you wanting to go more into community. Did you start off being very much involved in physical theater yourself? Like, because that's quite a specific form, isn't it, within the theatrical world? And did you start also with just a couple of friends and then it grew?
Yeah, so two things. Yes, I mean, I didn't really realize I really liked physical theatre. It wasn't so much of a thing when I was at university, but I think I always sort of, in my performance, was always led towards more physicality. And then I think it was because there was quite a tradition of it in Liverpool because of this program, this physical theatre program. So. Yeah. And once I started doing that, I found this real love for movement. And I actually like lots of different forms of theatre, but I think you have to sort of choose and focus on one thing. So that's what I did. And there wasn't many other people doing that particular style that we were doing. So it made sense. And there was a second part to that, which was, so there was There was two other people on the course I was on. That was, we were really encouraged to make our own work, to devise our own work. So we had a lot of experience in that on the course. And we just had a common sort of love for a specific type of theatre. We were like obsessed with like Pina Bausch and all these kind of amazing practitioners. And so three of us got together and we made our first show, which was Tmesis together. And then Kate, she left after the first show because she wanted to have more of a normal life, not this crazy theatre company life. And me and Yorgos, who was from Greece, we worked together in a duo performing till about 2009. And then he left and I carried on running the company by myself. But I work with a lot of freelance practitioners. So there's a lot of performers who've been, particularly like Jen and Eleni, who've been in the past for 4 shows. So there's a network of creatives that I work with often, like the same composer, the same designer. And then obviously we just bring in freelance artists, working in partnership with our producer at the moment, Claire, to make the festival and make the participatory programs.
So it really sounds like it has kind of morphed. You've had a lot of people come on board as and when you need them, but there are some core people within your company that have stayed with you for a long time?
Yeah. So, I mean, I run the company, I guess, so I'm the artistic director. But I think those relationships are really, really important, creatively and in other ways as well. You know, that's kind of, those people, you trust them, you can work with them. But also, I think more recently, what's been nice is working in a way that can engage different performers and creatives. So we just made a piece, Wicked Women, with 10 women.
Yes.
So that started off as a training company piece, and that was an initiative for us to find more women we could actually work with and train in this way. And then I thought, actually, wouldn't it be great to give them work? They're fantastic. So apply for some funding to make it into a professional piece. So it just extends the amount of people and performers that we can work with and we can draw on when there's a project, which is lovely. Yeah.
And on that note, very, very curious. I'm sure a lot of us are who here online as well have questions about starting a company and then working and running it successfully. It's 2 different things, isn't it? And did you have, because we were talking about you working in the sense of contributing to community via your company, was that something that was very present at the beginning? Did you have like a business model, a plan going into it? Or I know a lot of young companies that just start with graduates, they kind of just throw themselves in and then figure it out as you go along. Like what? Yeah. Do you tell us your experience with that?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, at the beginning, you don't know what it's going to be. So I think it sounds obvious, but it's really important to, if you're just starting out, that the business plans, legal setups, none of that is important at the beginning. The first thing is the work, the creative work. And you don't know, so there's no point in saying, let's be a company and make loads of logos and things, when you actually have no idea if, firstly, that you'll be able to work well together, and whether the work will be good, because the work does depend on the collaboration and, whether you can work with those people, whoever they are. But the first thing is make the work, take time to make the work, find some space, get some support, and just see if it works. What will always be the most important thing is the work, and it's easy to forget that in this kind of world and in general. But I think that was kind of drummed into us, and by some of the practitioners we worked with early on, that really challenged us, because it's also, this might sound slightly patronising, but you can be sort of a hit with your mates or at university, and it's so important to, you might make a great piece, and I've seen that some people have been encouraged, go straight to the Fringe, and it's like, that piece isn't ready, and then they have a disappointing experience. So yeah, really focus firstly on the work, on the quality of work, find out, take time in the rehearsal room, invite people in, invite practitioners you trust in, just to give you an opinion. And obviously too many opinions is too much, but yeah, that's, as a starting point, I think that's the most important thing. And I kind of did a little list of what I thought, like, if I could think of at the beginning. I don't know if you want to hear it.
Yeah, I think all of us, we should raise our hands, those of us who want to hear these key things that you've prepared for us today. Yes, go for it.
I mean, there's so much I could talk about, so it'd be interesting to hear what people actually want to know. But yeah, some of these things are obvious, but I'll just say what I thought for the beginning. So the work, obviously the first thing. The next thing, your collaborators. So what are their dynamics, and defining the roles, really important. So another thing I've come across is, I mean, obviously I've come across that a lot in my time as a company, but other young companies, when you have one person who's doing all the work, all the marketing, all the, pushing everything forward, and getting frustrated with the others. So my kind of advice is just like, well, why don't you be the director then of the company? And then you have the ownership, and the others are your collaborators, so you don't have to get annoyed with them. But who's, you might be a complete cooperative decision. That's great. That's difficult, but also lovely. I miss that sometimes. So you're defining roles and knowing that it's really, really hard work. And you're going to, I mean, I was kind of shocked at the beginning. I was just like, you are literally suddenly become everything. You're like an accountant, a marketing person, a PR, a van driver, a set mover, an actor, a director, the list goes on, doesn't it? But you've got to be prepared to do the admin. You can't, it's not going to work without that. And so within your group, defining those roles and defining them based on who's good at different things. I was never great at selling the shows. I'd be like, hello, if you don't want it, fine, bye. But Yorgos, who I worked with, was very charming at selling shows. So he did that at the beginning before we could get a producer on board. The next thing is use your network, reach out. So if you're starting up, use your existing network. So what can you get for free? What support can you get? And even not just your existing network, but who is around that. So for example, like I'm really passionate about supporting and developing creatives. So if I've just met someone once, or even actually if they email me, I will try and help them, and people will. So
you're quite rare.
That might be in different ways. That might be, would you look over a funding application? Things like that. Again, an important thing that I've come across as well, but is what are your priorities? So another issue that have come to me from other young companies is, you've made this show, but so-and-so, they might get a job at this point, so we might not be able. And I think you just have to make a decision. Obviously, you're going to need to do other work, so you won't get paid. But for example, we made a decision that our other work was restaurants and whatever, the first few years. So we could fully focus on the company and take any opportunities that came up. That might not be the right decision for you, but you have to know, because it can be really upsetting if suddenly one of your members says, sorry, I've got a job and I can't do that, So even if it's in the short term, you say any opportunities in the next 6 months, we're as a company, we're taking them. The thing is, as with anything in life, you have to let go of some things. There's many things that I wanted to do that, but I knew that. I mean, I was kind of late when I started, so I went to university at 21, so it was a little bit like, okay, better get a move on, really. So when I started a company, I was 25, and I was like, okay, I've got to fully focus on that. And the other thing, yes, so no, it's hard work. I've said that plan. You mentioned business plans. You don't really need those. Unfortunately, I have to do them. But, like we're working with these women on the creative development course, and that's what we're trying to encourage them to do. Is it really, really helps your head to know your plan, as simple as it may be, and helps you feel like you've achieved something, you've ticked something off. So splitting the jobs, having a plan, imagine where you want to be in 10 years and dream big. And then everything, you kind of look, you have to go back from there and go, okay, and then what am I doing the next month? Or in lockdown, what can I actually do? And you don't have to suddenly make loads of content. You don't have to at all, but just, having a plan, sharing that and communicating. Test your work, test it. Do scratch nights, get feedback. The audience are the most important. Your university tutor or whoever you invite, they're not the most important. The important people are the people that see the work. And the scratch nights at different theatres, they're great because you get in with the theatre a little bit, and you know, try and have a chat with the artistic director, make sure they see it. But also you meet other artists and you can get feedback, and that's really important for the development of your work. And getting that feedback from a range of people. So I always try and, you know, we have little showings and invite people, and I love having people in the rehearsal room. So I love like having work experience people, or like, and I'm always, you know, their opinion is as important as mine, I think. So I say, what do you think? And they're like, what? Why are you asking me? And I'm, no, really, like, does that work? And say no if you don't think so, and why. And going outside your home city. So I mentioned that as well, like away from your home audience, and testing until you feel you're ready. Keep learning. I've said that. Go to workshops. Workshops are great for networking. We met at a workshop.
Yes, we did.
It's really important. That's your community. That's your future audience as well, and also maybe collaborators. And then I guess as you're starting to work and develop your work, you might already have shows ready to go, but it is about defining your style. How would you describe it? And one really good way that we've used is asking other people. So we do a work in progress, and we say, you know, write down 3 things this show made you feel or think, or, you know, so actually when you're looking at marketing, people want to know what the experience is going to be like, and so you can test that and get feedback. And who is it for? Who are you making the work for? It's not for yourself, or if it is, then that's fine, and you could just make shows on your own, in your own house for yourself. That's nothing wrong with that. And then, yeah, if you invite people, obviously, if you get your work funded, invite the funders, but invite people to see it. Don't invite the press when you're not ready, because that can just be really crushing, I think. Those were my sort of first things to say. There's loads more, but I should let you ask some questions.
I think it's quite wonderful, you know, the breakdown, the list that you've just given us, because I think a lot of people going in, starting out, we kind of have these amorphous ideas of what we want to do and what our voice is like. How long did it take you from that point of like, okay, I think we've got a really good idea here and we want to test it, to when you started seeing momentum build, and when you started getting, say, perhaps like almost like your official, we're here, you know, like a lot of theater companies go, we've just started, we're testing this out. So how long did that take you? I know it's different for different companies, but when was that point where you felt quite confident that, yeah, we've got something quite solid here and it's going to work?
Well, I suppose it'd be the first piece. So, well, no, it wasn't actually. I keep forgetting we made this, well, it's probably horrendous now, version of Medea. I just remembered that. Oh my God. And we did it at Scratch in Liverpool at the Everyman, and we were speaking and doing physicality, and it was just awful. So I decided not to speak for quite a few years in our shows, because, yeah, it sometimes, as I'm sure you've seen, can just be really cringeworthy. So we made that, but that was good actually, because that was a test, and then it was like, okay, we need a subject. We're going to just explore physicality, and so we made our first piece, which was called Tmesis, or Tmesis, you can say it either way. And we worked with some practitioners, and I guess we worked over the period that we did Scratch nights, maybe over a year. But we got a couple of good opportunities with that. We were in part of this festival at Camden Fringe, what's it called? Not Camden Fringe, Camden People's Theatre. And we were, I mean, it was a really good show. It was a really good first show that we worked on again and again and again over a year. We just kept tightening it and making it better. But at this festival, we were lucky enough that we got national press from showing an extract before we did the show. So we had, like, you know, reviews from Time Out, The Guardian and stuff. So that really set us off. And we got funding to make it. So yeah, it was, but the piece was good. It was a really strong piece, and it was different to what was being made here in Liverpool and around. And we also got into the London International Mime Festival with that piece. So we had quite a few opportunities early on, and took it out of Liverpool, and then we did a tour. I think we did about 30 shows of that piece.
Wow.
And then it made a comeback in 2009 as well. Yeah.
Ness Andrew, it says it was stunning, so I think he watched it. Fantastic. So that was that seems like a pretty quick timeline if you think about it, but I'm sure a lot of hard work went into that. We did have a question as well from Oscar Leonard, and I think it's quite relevant to just bring that in right now. And he said, because it's an ensemble devised, your company's ensemble devised for physical theater. He was talking. He mentioned for pitching for funding before or after you devise a piece. So literally wanting to know the timeline for that. How do you pitch it before it's been created? And just for everyone who's watching, Eleanor is a superstar when it comes to getting Arts Council funding, because I was like, hey, I checked out her Facebook and I was like, Wicked Women has received Arts Council funding Liverpool. And I was like, talk about that, Eleanor, tomorrow when I talked to her yesterday. And she was like, well, we've gotten Arts Council funding for pretty much most of our shows, all of our shows. So do let us. So that's a two-part question there for you. Oscar Leonard wants to know, where in the timeline do you look for funding? Also tell us about your successes.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on your stage of experience. So for us now, obviously we've got a sort of, however many years it is, since 2003, of experience and relationship with the Arts Council and with venues nationally. So I would apply for it with a basic idea. That idea will change, and that's okay, that's fine. You just have to be really, make it sound very, very like you're sure of it. Now, if you're just starting out, I think you need to have done work before. They're not just going to fund, unless you're an established artist, they're not really just going to fund something that has not had no outing. So I would really suggest you work on it first. You get together with the people you're working with, you do some scratch nights, and then when you apply for your first funding, you can go, we've already done this, we've already got this feedback, here's some videos, here's some, that's another really important tip is invite people to give you feedback. So peer quotes and quotes from professionals. So for example, if you were in Liverpool, you could invite me, or you could invite other people who work with theatre companies to watch your work, ask for a quote. If they liked it, if they didn't, then they won't give you one. And those quotes from professionals are so important in your appendix and your Arts Council application. So yeah, I would say you need to do some work first. I mean, you need to anyway, because you don't really know, I guess, at the beginning what you're going to do. Yeah. And then so you've got the idea, you've done a scratch, whatever that might be. It might be you've done 20 minutes, it might be you've done a version of the whole thing. And then you can apply for the funding to make the whole piece. I mean, I think it depends. It does depend on what the project is. I suppose now I'm talking about a theatre show, but there's lots of different types of projects you can do that work in different ways. And another thing I'd say about specifically Arts Council funding, because it is the main, obviously, funder of the arts in the UK, is, so for an under £15,000 application, which I really recommend you start with that, there's no point going higher on your first application. It's a 6-week turnaround. So it's actually a really quick turnaround. And I would recommend you leave enough space to put it in 3 times before your show. And don't be discouraged, because I know people who've been working for years that got rejected and then they got it on the 3rd time. It's really competitive. It's going to be more so not to be depressing, but it's hard. So yeah. The more you expect when you're starting out, the more you can put into this Arts Council application that makes you sound like you've really already done some work. You've got an idea. What is the artistic idea behind it? It can't be, I just want to put on a play. It's got to have, it's public money, and it's got to have a reason. It's got to involve some participation in some way as well. So I'd also really recommend, because it's not a skill everyone has in writing applications. I've become skilled at it through a lot of pain and hours. And I still write draft after draft, and I put a lot of time into it, but get somebody to read it. And another really basic point, which sounds obvious, but I do read applications for people. Don't all email me at once. But it's amazing how some people don't answer the question and they don't read the guidelines. So if that's the first thing, and don't waffle, just be really succinct. And you've got to think you're going to be in competition with other people. There's always this thing about being unique, which can be a little bit boring, but you do have to think, what is it that you're doing, saying, what are you doing that's different, and why? Go back to the core of why you're passionate about it.
Yeah, that's going to come through quite a bit. And when you, because you mentioned that you did the tour after that, especially coming back to your first production that was quite successful, and then you did a tour on it. Was the funding, did you have funding from Arts Council for the tour, for any part of it?
Yeah. So we had funding for, I think we did 2 national tours, so we had funding for both of those.
Wow.
So, I mean, the Arts Council is the same, but it changes all the time in their priorities. And so at that time, there was a very specific route you went on. You did a work in progress, you made your show, then you applied for tour funding. And you might do a regional first and then a national. And it's changed a little bit. And actually, touring is ridiculously expensive. And so I think the priority isn't necessarily getting loads and loads of dates. It's about your relationship with those venues. And that's the most important thing. So they'll be much more happy if you had 8 really good dates with venues that are good, with participatory work involved, than 20, because it actually costs them less, than just going everywhere and anywhere.
What do you mean by having good relationships with the venues?
So I suppose it's something that, I mean, there's certain venues we've been to a lot with different shows, and I think it's really important that the venue you're going to, it's a collaboration. So it's not like you might have to hire venues if you want to show your work at the beginning, but you should never really be hiring venues. It should be either a split or a fee. And it should be a partnership. Not all venues do this very well, but they should be booking you for a reason, and you should be going there for a reason. And the reason you should be going there is because you've researched the venue and you know your work fits into their program. And they know your work, they know there's an audience for your work. Now, I'm not saying it always works that way, but it should. So, and then it's about okay, let's make a partnership. What can we do? How can we develop an audience? Have you got an audience for us to do a workshop? Like we did when we met at Jackson's Lane. And how can we build an audience? Because it is difficult, to get audiences. So what is that relationship? It's not just a transaction. It should be a relationship, a partnership. And that is difficult early on, but I think that's why it's really important to sign up to theatre's mailing list and eDigest, Arts Council, and find out what venues, a lot of them do, and they should all have a scheme for new work. And then they should support you in the process. So it's really important to think about audience and audience development, and to do that in partnership with the venue. But yeah, keep an eye out for whatever schemes there are, whatever opportunities. And I guess just know at the beginning as well that, you are going to have to work without being paid. And anything you do, any job, you have to get experience, don't you? So it's putting in the time. And I think know that if you make a really good piece of work, something will happen with it, for sure. It might not be what it might not be Broadway or whatever it is your dream was, but that doesn't mean that those shows are better. Actually, it just might mean what's in trend or what's got NPO funding and then is on every school syllabus. But something will happen with it if you make a quality show. Yeah.
I'm also quite curious. I'm sure a lot of those a lot of wonderful people watching now are also wondering, obviously, with regards to our current pandemic life, wanting to start and also work as a theater company is obviously it's changing. Everybody's kind of wondering what's going on and how to proceed. What are some of your feelings about it, your instincts about it, but also having been doing the work for so long, where do you see it going for, and what advice could you give?
Well, yeah, there's quite big things, really, isn't it? I think that um, it'll be interesting to see what happens with the digital stuff. I think people are just going to crave to be in a live space even more, to be honest. But how and when that'll happen is interesting. I'm thinking now about our festival, and I'm starting to think of alternative, non-digital ways of showing things as well. And I think it's interesting to adapt. You have to last this long, and this pandemic is nothing we've experienced before. But anyway, culture, time, economy is always changing, and you have to adapt to that. So I think that if you're a theatre company and you had an idea for a show, don't let that go. You know, you can keep working on that. You know, most of the work that I do is before I mean, there's a lot of work before I get in the room, because you can only afford a certain amount of time with the actors, is my own research and thinking, and you can be doing that. I think that's great. What was the other part of the question?
It was related to that, like with regards to also wanting to start and work as a theater company in these times and moving forward. What are your instincts on that? I think you answered some of it already.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good time to do your research and get inspired. I mean, there's so much you can watch, isn't there? That's brilliant, and you can have those creative conversations, and you can maybe be in a better space. I think it's really interesting, like we were talking to the group we work with about creativity and how it's a space. It's a space that you're in. It's not that you have it or you don't. It's a space. And hopefully with a little bit less craziness in our lives, that space can be open a little bit more for thinking. Yeah. And I think, you know, it'll be a long time before we see 500 people in a theatre again. And this is really sad, but I think it's also opens up some interesting opportunities for smaller companies. So, you know, maybe there'll be lots of sort of 50-seaters, or maybe there'll be intimate theatre experiences. I think it's really interesting to respond, and not necessarily, you know, respond in terms of the content being about this crisis, because I think there'll be a lot of that. Which might get quite boring.
Yeah, kind of dreading how many sort of like next year festival coronavirus themed shows are going to be out there. Are you going down that route yourself?
No, I mean, you know, you can. I think we are going to do a project that is digital. That is because we can't do it live, but it's not going to be about the virus. Not funny at all. Sorry, but I will laugh at all the awful monologues that are going to come up.
Yeah. And on that note, do tell us about, so you have an upcoming production. It's Wicked Women, and it's all the extraordinary women who changed the world, who transformed the world, is your tagline. Tell us about that, and how is that going ahead? When is that going ahead as well?
Well, we were lucky enough to perform it literally just before the theatres closed. Okay. Which was great. So, yeah, it was a fantastic cast, fantastic experience. And it was different to what I've done before, because it was a short show, because it started off as a street show. So it was just half an hour, a cast of 10 amazing women, a lot of whom were in the training company. And, yeah, it was, we did it, and we also had conversations with the audience around gender, and so this format, going to venues in the Northwest and talking to the audience, was just beautiful, and women and people of all ages really enjoyed the show. And yeah, so we want to do more with that. It can be performed outdoors, it can be performed indoors. I think it's a great piece for events. We've had a couple of requests for conferences, because it's really empowering and moving, and it kind of goes through loads of women very quickly, and yeah, it's physical and it's bold, and it's, yeah. So it's difficult, because conversations we had about putting it on are obviously on hold. So yeah, we'll have to see.
Yeah, and we're going to be waiting with bated breath because we've got quite a few comments now of some people who've logged on watching us today have seen it and they've said it's phenomenal. And they're so glad that Jade's said that she was so glad to watch it before lockdown.
Jade,
Yeah. Do you have an idea when the show will be back on its feed and when would you be able to, or is that information you're not able to provide just yet, I guess?
I don't think anyone knows. I mean, it's constantly changing, isn't it? I kind of hear now that the theatres won't be open this year, so
yeah.
But again, I think we were chatting to our board of directors, and it was interesting because we were saying, because again, this sort of smaller companies, there might be opportunities because you have work, you can just get out there, you can do it, you don't need a massive set coming in on a truck, and you know, so, and I think what will change, not just because of this, but because of what needs to change is more work in the community and more work directly with artists and audiences and not venue led. So I think that'll be interesting to go, okay, we can take it here. You know, we've got quite a few shows that are still in the repertoire that we can do that with, and obviously we'll be thinking about making new work when we can.
Yeah, and that's such a, I mean, thank you for saying that. I feel like that's such a freeing perspective, and to not be hemmed in by the thought of just a venue, but a traditional venue, but looking outside the box, literally. Fantastic. There's just a fun question there, and I think we could probably take some extra questions from anyone, if anyone has questions at this point for Eleanor. There's a really fun question here that I just couldn't ignore, which was, who is your Wicked Woman by by Zoe Smith. Who would be your Wicked Woman? Was this show inspired by anyone in particular? A group of women that you had in mind, but then obviously has changed while you were working on the piece?
Well, there's so many, you know, and because, you know, these women brought these great ideas of women, some I'd never heard of, to the piece. And then I did loads of research as well. So I just kept coming across more and more amazing women. And it started off actually with this, you know, there's a movement, isn't there, which is great for minority groups coming up, different movements over the past 5 years. So when the sort of Rebel Girls books came out, and that, I just thought, this is brilliant. And it's really pushing young girls to come out of themselves. But it is scary how many people were not recorded in history. So finding out more and more each day. I haven't answered who's my Wicked Woman.
Yeah.
But
who would be your Wicked?
I don't know if I could think of one. But there's so many, like, I think particularly, like, I have a lot of strong women in my family. Especially my aunties and my mum, and I just think they're so kind of inspirational because they've all really worked hard and they forged their own, you know, they all come from working class backgrounds and they've forged their own careers in various different paths, and they kind of gave me this real work ethic, and hopefully sort of down to earthness. That's not a way of putting it, but I'll see if I can think of a well-known heroine before we finish.
Yeah, no, fantastic. I'm just thinking as well, like we've come from strong women, and also obviously men, your mothers too, and your sisters, especially. I think we're all going to emerge much stronger from this time, you know, this pandemic time and stuff, and more creative and more resourceful. So yeah, I'm just going to ask everyone if you've got any other questions for Eleanor to do with, you know, working as a theater company, starting as a theater company. I have one question for you. Oh, Alex says there's a question. How to decide what shows to create with your company? Alex, I think that we did talk about that earlier, but I'm curious to hear what, Eleanor, if you have anything else to say about that.
What shows to create? Well, normally it's something that's kind of been on my mind for a while, and it'll either be a theme, and sometimes actually it's quite broad. So there was a period of shows, when I started directing the ensemble instead of performing, there was one about the culture of romantic love. Then there was one about happiness and the happiness industry. Then there was one about death and the future of technology. And these were things that obviously I was thinking about in my life. and then they became shows. So either they were thematic or a storyline emerged, because I work with the writer mostly. Yeah, so I think I have a general kind of idea, and I think about that a lot, and I research it, and then I chat with the writer. And it's normally something like, oh, this is interesting, you know, what is going on with this ridiculous self-help happiness industry? You know, at the same time in my life, I'm thinking, oh, I don't feel completely happy. I think I should be by however old I was. And then you realize, oh, you never maybe totally are. So it's like, the theme is interesting, but then it's how do you make it into a show? What, you know, that comes from research, watching films. I really like the sort of, that element of it, the research element. Reading books and then chatting to the writer and then getting in the space and seeing what happens with the performers. Sometimes it's like, say, for example, Wicked Women. It was a very straightforward concept, and I had to make the piece in 6 days initially.
Ooh.
So in that case, I knew exactly what I was going to do. But when you have a bit longer, you can explore more and see what comes out of the ensemble and the performers. So yeah, sometimes they can be very conceptual. I mean, street theatre has to be, because it's got to be fast and punchy, because your audience can just walk away if they're not entertained for 2 seconds.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I hope that's answered Alex's question. I think it definitely has. And there is probably a side question with that, with regards, because your company is very much focused on creating your own work. I know some companies out there are about sort of maybe putting on work that's been done before and things like that, and that process might be quite different for them. Have you ever had that? Have you ever taken from, you know, as far as inspiration goes, have you ever taken from a previous piece of literature or a previous piece of, let's say, even theater, and then sort of explored it further and made it your own?
I've never worked with a play text, not with the company. I've directed others, but I suppose, yeah, I've taken an influence from literature. So the very first piece was based on Plato's Symposium about the origin of love, but it's an influence. So sometimes, yeah, maybe taking a story. But yeah, and I suppose another thing to say is that in terms of creating your own work and making it, that my biggest learning was the directors we brought in to work with us. So
external directors.
Yeah, and well, they were all theatre makers, you know, as well. So they taught us a lot, and then, you know, that I've kind of taken that into my own directing and way of working.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, I think we've mentioned quite a lot today with regards to starting and working. Just before we go, because I think we're going to start wrapping up soon, is what are some of the, you know, like problems that you encountered that you didn't see coming and that just went, whoa, I'm going to deal with it now, within, you know, having your own company and the responsibility of that. And, you know, if you had any examples that and learnings that you had from that you could share.
Some I can't share, but well, actually, some of it comes back to some of the stuff I said at the beginning. So defining roles and yeah, so collaboration, working with people is the best thing and worst thing about doing anything, isn't it? So I think, you know, and communication, and also just knowing when, you know, something perhaps doesn't work anymore, which is fine. You know, I think what's really important, when I went to a sort of conference in festival management, I really remember something. This woman got on stage. She was an amazing older woman who ran these amazing festivals in Berlin. And she said, "Why are you doing your festival?" And I was like, "Oh my God, I don't know." And I thought, I don't know. That's ridiculous. I haven't thought about it for a while. So it's always going back and going, because it can be really easy just to get on that treadmill of keep going and, oh, we made this, so people will expect us to do this and that. And actually, you know, to sit back and reflect and go, okay, why am I doing it? And particularly a festival is not about me. It's about whether it's required for anybody else. And if it's not anymore, I stop doing it. Yeah. You know, it's okay. It's okay also to let go of things, to let go of relationships, to let go of maybe an idea that you had. The difficulties that have come is like, for example, if we've applied for a grant and not got it, and then not left enough time, because obviously there's lots of different types of funding that you apply for. Most projects are, like, for example, a festival is made up of a lot of components.
Yeah.
I think another thing is everything comes down to clear communication, and other problems we've come across is about not having that clear communication or clear contracts with perhaps a venue or an artist, or I don't know, I'm trying to think, but I think making sure you know what the agreement is, getting things in writing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the difficulties. I mean, there's loads of difficulties along the way. It's not easy at all. And I think you go through, like, you kind of get used to that, but going through kind of like, you have periods where you're like top and, you know, you're really successful, you know, periods where, you know, maybe you don't feel so successful. And it's just kind of like trying to, as difficult it is, ignore what everybody else is doing. Which was so much easier when we started than it is now. It's like you're doing your thing, and for me, like, integrity is so important. You know, it's like,
yeah,
you're having integrity about what you do and genuinely working with people, helping people, connecting with your audience, and to me is more important than the biggest hit. Of course, we'd love to have that too, but, you know, being true to yourself, knowing keep going back to that vision. Is it still that? Maybe it needs to change, and it's okay to change it.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are scared of that, because especially if they're known for one thing or for one, I don't know, a vibe or something, and then they feel like it's going to change and they don't listen to that. And very often the results aren't great because people can feel that you're kind of out of sync with your message.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's some really successful companies that make quite different shows each time, you know, and then there's some where, you know, it's so obvious it's basically the same show, just slightly different. You know, so I know when we started, it was like, I mean, people freaked out when we started speaking, and they still haven't got over it, because, you know, they were like, but we just liked it when you moved. It was like, well, and it's actually really hard, because it's like with music, isn't it? It's like people always hark back to your first album, or, you know, and it's like, actually, you have to kind of go, okay, as well. The other thing I would say is, you know, you're going to get criticism, you're going to get good and bad, and you just have to kind of, well, you take, I think you need to be prepared to listen, but also just discard as well. You know, like, yeah. I mean, it's like that anyway, isn't it? Being an actor, or being where you're kind of in the public eye, where you're like, you're putting yourself out for exposure. And also now, like when we started, there was not all these millions of online bloggers that literally can just say anything they want, you know. So it was only like, I mean, the internet was there, not that old, but it was mostly like papers, you know. So yeah, just it's have a thick skin, and just, again, it's like going back to your core and your integrity and going, well, you know, I was happy with that, I worked hard on that. And thinking about your audience, you know, it's like, does it do something? Does it say something? Does it move people? Does it entertain people? Does it, you know, is it self-indulgent?
Yeah. Oh dear. Sometimes we don't know about, like, that's there until someone else.
If you test your work, and if you ask people, and if you ask real people, not just artists, you'll know for sure.
Or friends that want to remain in your good books, or
well, exactly, yeah. But also, a good test is, you know, is it boring at any point? You know, it's actually quite difficult to hold people's attention for an hour.
Yeah.
I think, you know, it sounds dead simple, doesn't it? John Wright, who's one of my favourite practitioners, has said the only rule of theatre is don't be boring.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, because, you know, there's not really any excuses there.
Theatre is hard, but we love it, don't we?
It's a lot of boring. It just amazes me. You go in sort of bigger main houses and you see people asleep, or you see people like really not interested for like half of the show, and at the end they're on their feet cheering. So I just think, okay, then you go, all right, yeah, there is something like ridiculous about this whole thing, isn't there?
Wow. Well, it's been absolutely fantastic chatting with you today, Ellie. And so and you know, this Insta Live is going to be on for the next 24 hours here. So, but beyond that as well, how can we, you know, follow you? Do let us know what's the best way for us to watch what you're doing, and also how do we get in contact with you if, you know, as young practitioners, we would like some advice on something. Do let us know.
Yeah, and please do. I'm always really happy, and we do have development programs, and we will be running the training company as well, which people might be interested in. So you can the contacts are on the website, which is tmesistheatre.com. Follow us on.
And the spelling for that is TMESIS Theatre.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I won't tell you the story, but we got sued for our first name. That's why it's such a difficult name that no one would choose for a theatre company. We're on Twitter at Tmesis Theatre, Facebook, and if you sign up to our mailing list, you'll hear about what we've got going on. I think that, I mean, if you're interested in physical theatre, for the festival, we have a volunteer programme. So you get to like come take part in workshops, see shows, meet amazing people from all over the world. So yeah,
that's Liverpool, right?
And
the festival is usually in Liverpool.
It's always in Liverpool, yeah. Bring the world to Liverpool. And it's going to be on next year. That's if we get the funding and if, you know, festivals can take place, etc. But yeah, like feel free to contact if you'd like any advice or if you're interested in just like observing a rehearsal process or whatever.
Wow, thank you. Thank you, Ellie. That's very, very generous of you. And I hope a lot of people watching this take you up on that offer because that's absolutely generous. And thank you for your time today. It's been a wonderful hour with you. And we have more of these lovely programs coming up for everyone who's watching over the next couple of weeks with our virtual pending festival. So thank you again, Ellie. And
thanks for having me.
See you then.
Bye.
Bye.